Welcome to No Boundaries, Up Close and Personal. I'd like to introduce, of course, our special guest here today, SAL ANZALONE, the writer of Marvin's Fetish.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here, Sal. This production, I heard, is really going to be pretty meaty.
Well, it's going to be wonderful because this is the first theatrical presentation. It's been featured at Sage, and I'm eternally grateful that Sage has is a platform that it's been just a reading. This is the first performance. They're learning their lines. They're doing wonderfully. They work so well with one another, and I'm grateful for Alan Baxter for directing and giving me the opportunity of publishing Marvin's Fetish in What Wives Don't Know. And it's available on Amazon as well as the Drama Bookstore. And they added dimensions to my play that I never knew existed because of their superb talents.
Now, Sal, you remind me so much of a Marvin. I don't know why, but Sal, tell me, actually, what brought you to this threshold with this production, and where did you start, and how did you pull together the energies to be able to do it?
I was at a social, and Alan Baxter said, "Hey, I'm having a reading on Saturday. Why don't you come see it?" I did exactly that. I brought a friend with me, and during the production, I said to my friend Tony, "This is similar to my play about someone from the Bronx not doing so well, and it's about hustling, and I wonder if he'd read it." After the Q&A, I asked Alan. He said, "Sure." The next week, I gave him a copy. He said, "I'd love to publish this." And I was like blown away. And after that, he said, "I'd like to do a reading. I'd love to direct. If you haven't gotten a director, I'd love to direct it. But can I let you know, can I get the actors for you?" I said, "I trust you." I've been so happy with watching them rehearse, and they're great.
Okay. I know this production is going to be coming up, actually, the end of March. But before we get to that, why don't you tell me about your journey as a writer? I think that's so important, and to where we've come to this point.
I was involved with GMOB, which stands for Gay Men of the Bronx, and they were having a Night of 1,000 Gowns was a theatrical production. I don't do drag. I serve society better as a male than in drag. So I was the only one who wrote a, quote, straight little play, and called The Cop and the Drag Queen, which will be filmed as a movie and directed by Alan Baxter. So that was my first foray into writing. And after that, I said, you know, I think I'm going to pursue this. And I did.
That's amazing. On this show over the years, we've had one writer who's a dear friend of mine who's passed on now, but this is the second time actually in history that I have had another writer on talking about a production, and it kind of amazes me what goes on in the head of a writer and how he actually translates that work to paper. What happens to you? What inspires you to be able to write down and create these characters?
Well, I think every writer draws upon their own life experience, and also they use other writers as to test the waters. For instance, I was watching Collected Stories, and that had 2 female characters, and I said to myself, why don't I try to write about one straight and one gay character and have it just the 2 of them, no 20 people in the cast. And I thought about high school, and how in high school there's always a fantasy that's a bit unfulfilled. And I said, what if? I always start with the premise of what if. I said, what if they meet 20 years later? They'll talk about how they're doing, maybe regrets they've had about how they treated each other way back. And that was, I was set on that. At first, I thought it would take place in a diner, a coffee shop. And then I thought about it deeper, and I said, no, for what I want to happen, they must be at someone's home. And that's exactly how it transpired. I had 7 drafts before I was actually satisfied with what went in here.
In the final draft. In the final draft. That's pretty interesting, because I always thought that writers, as soon as it comes into being into them spiritually, that they jot it down and that's their finished product. But obviously, every writer is different, and it took you 7 times, and it's like 7-11 or lucky 7 that you realize that, hey, this is the one that I want to move forward with. What made you do it 7 times?
Well, I've written other plays, but this is the most celebrated. I did it 7 times because if I try to build on an emotion, and it doesn't always happen the first time, and I'm really I try to discipline myself. Something that seems effortless to read. These actors read material all the time. And something that's difficult for them to read, they're aware that the author hasn't done his homework. But something that is so smooth that comes out dialogue-wise means that the writer really poured his heart and did his homework and slaved over it. So that's what
sure. I'm sure. I think the creative fires were burning for you many nights and days in order for you to be satisfied with the characters and bring them to life in a way that you felt would be able to relate to the audience or to the people that are reading your story, script, play.
Yeah, exactly. It's really a diabolical dialogue duel. And from there, I said, oh, this could go anywhere. And it did. There are twists and turns that they can tell you that I love I attend every rehearsal practically because they work so well with each other.
That's good. Yeah. I think that's the energy, and that's the whole business of casting and feeling the right actor, and not only that, giving the actor a chance to be able to show that they could be inventive and creative within the script, because sometimes when you're working with a script, it's like so staid, and so some of the best or greatest actors have been able to ad-lib and put their own portrayal or their own life experiences, or even a portion of or someone they know, into what they're portraying. That's interesting. We would talk about egos, and in this business, in the acting business alone, the egos, I think if we could pile up the energy of the egos, I think it could run the power plant, and I will say that, and some that necessarily need that kind of ego or self-esteem to be able to push them. And so I want to just say that I was watching you rehearsing, and immediately the camera doesn't lie, and I saw there was a magic there. I saw that there was a realization there. I think that's the most important thing, is the realization to be believable when you are portraying a character. More so the stage and the theater, because you can't cut and redo it. So, and I wanted to just make mention of that.
Thank you.
I'm kind of like, this story, and I want to touch upon this because this is so important. and even within the LGBT community, and I need to say this in the characters you portray, there is so much underlying racism within the LGBT community, and it seems to me that when it's, as Marty Markowitz, a good friend of mine, past Brooklyn Borough President, said, love is love. And in seeing the little bit that I saw, I wonder if you as a writer thought about that. Sal?
It was a non-issue for me because it's human. The heart can't control who you love, and so it was a non-issue for me.
That's interesting.
And the situation is interesting in itself. In that Marvin Casper has so much money, more than he knows how to spend, and he knows that his former high school friend is not doing too well as a waiter. And that's what initially brings the two of them together after a big period of no communication since high school. But there's so much more. I mean, the play has loyalty and questioning loyalties and lust, a lot of greed, and especially ambition, without giving too much away.
Okay.
And Glenn Close is the actress that Marvin wrote a screenplay for. And how awesome it would be if eventually, in the not too distant future, Glenn Close would either play herself or play a character like that.
Within the story.
Exactly,
Within the
yeah.
story. That's really very interesting. Saying that the story is multidimensional, and I'm kind of like picking it apart and just seeing so many different arenas that these gladiators are going at it in this personal struggle for who will be satisfied, may I say, you know, personal satisfaction, as well as a questioning on feeling good about themselves, because I think there's also a mind game going on
it's
here
a
as well.
Yes, Ron. It's a psychological thriller, actually, much like Sleuth and Death Trap was years and years ago. And I tried to bring that to their parts.
I saw that. Can make you believe at one point, but then at another point, you're not sure. And is that what Marvin is struggling with too as well? Because Marvin knows what he wants.
Marvin doesn't mind at all that John Corelli is a little cold and a little egocentric and a little sexist. In fact, I think it turns him on. I wrote it that way. So I think Marvin learns that who he chooses to tell his business to can make the difference between dignity and humiliation. I mean, that's the crux of the story. And now it's 20 years later, so what are you going to do about it? How are we going to resolve this, if we're going to resolve this at all?
That's interesting. And so with that, we're going to be back. And welcome back right here on No Boundaries, Up Close and Personal. You know, kicking off this March show, we have our special guest, SAL ANZALONE, the writer of Marvin's Fetish, along with the actors who are going to be portraying the characters Marvin and John here on the set. And you know, I decided to give you a little taste of what you can see in March. And just remember, March 31st, they're going to be premiering this production, and we'll give you more information on that later. But the book that I have right in front of me, actually the production is going to be directed by Baxter, who's also an author and playwright, and his titles are Juan and Emmett, and right underneath is, of course, Marvin's Fetish. So if you want to purchase this book, you can purchase it on Amazon, and it also can be purchased at the Drama Bookshop. So with no further ado, let's tune into Marvin's Fetish. I just want to thank our guest, SAL ANZALONE, the writer of Marvin's Fetish. Thank you so much for being here and giving us the opportunity to catch a glimpse into Marvin's Fetish. See you soon. Hey, you're simply the best.